Hey guys, cool. So today we're going to do a very exciting video on meeting transcript automation. So this is going to involve a couple of different pieces of our tech stack. We're going to go through Tactic, we're going to go through OpenAI, and of course the final piece is going to be where the meeting transcript summary goes. So that could be Google Sheets in this example, but of course Slack, your CRM, Trello, literally anywhere. So we'll talk that through as well. Two quick ones before we start. There's two videos I recommend watching before this one. The first one is quite a short one. It's just around how to set up your OpenAI developer account. Sounds scary, really easy. If you already have a OpenAI account, you just need that. It's just like clicking a couple of buttons and then you have the API key ready for you to do what we're about to do today. And the other one is a fantastic video from Dan regarding how to set up a company GPT. That video is going to be especially useful because it's going to talk through how to basically use ChatGPT to build your prompt out. Because if you try and write stuff right from the beginning, it can be a bit of a ball ache, quite frankly. Cool. So to start at the very beginning, we are inside of Zapier. I've just created this little view here. So the first thing is the trigger. So the trigger is going to be when a new file or transcript drops into a folder in your Google Drive. So where is the transcript going to come from and how do you set that up? Great question. So it all starts with Tactic. So Tactic, I'll pop a link for it down in the bio. But Tactic is our transcription software of choice. We've experimented with Supernormal or Superhuman or whatever it's called, but quite frankly, Tactic has been spot on as our go-to. What we do is we integrate it into Google Drive through going to, you guessed it, integrations and going into Connect. And then in here, it will give you the option to basically set up connecting to your Google accounts. So you click sign in with Google and you would decide where to put it. I recommend putting it into a shared drive, and then by the end you'll have all of your meeting notes in one place. I've created a personalized shared drive for it just for ease, because having them all away in one place means I can get to them easier and everything is where I want it to be. So you've got yourself a Tactic account, you've gone into integrations, you've set up the integration between Tactic and Google Drive, you're now ready to rock. So that's this first point sorted here. The next thing is the conversation with assistant in ChatGPT. So, in Zapier, and this is an important point, when it's talking about ChatGPT, it's talking about everything that OpenAI does. So, if you look at the events in here, you can see it's got the analysis with vision, it's got the normal sort of chat conversation, it's got conversation with assistants, which is the thing we're going to do today, and also the ability to upload files directly into OpenAI and stuff like that. They do have another OpenAI module inside of Zapier, which I'll show you now. This one. Do not use that one. That one is from way back in the day. As you can see, it says GPT-3 on it, right? And the first DALL-E. Don't use it. Just use the ChatGPT one, because that's where they refresh everything, and it just makes life 10 times easier, really. So with that in mind, let's hop into this conversation with assistant. So what is an assistant? An assistant is basically just like a custom GPT, but you're able to use it in Zapier workflows. I mean, there's a lot more sort of nuanced bits that go underneath it, like you can add functions to it that tell it how to use APIs on the internet and shit, but bottom line is a custom GPT, but you're able to use it in Zapier workflows. That's all you really need to know to get started. So obviously when you're connecting this up, you will be able to select the chat GPT, the event to be conversation with assistant, you go into the account, setting up the account. So let's say I'm going to set up a new account, I'll do it again. It will come up with this little page here. You obviously then give it your API key, which is why watch that video around getting your API key from OpenAI, just so you can fill out this bit. But that's all you need and then you're ready to just sort of use it as normal. So you go into the actions. So the assistant is using is called Meeting Summarizer. So I've created that. So let's hop into the OpenAI playground to see what exactly this is. So, cool. So you can access the OpenAI sort of platform, the more developer-y looking bit, just by going to this URL here. The way that this works is, this is basically where if you're doing anything to do with coding and using OpenAI, this is the area that you need to go to. But it's also the place where you can sort of create assistants and everything like that too. If it wants to load, excellent, here we go, cool. So meeting summarizer. So what I've done in here is I've named it meeting summarizer. You then give it instructions in the same way you would do when you were creating a custom GPT to run you guys through it really quickly, just because I'm quite frankly, I'll share the prompt for this one in the bio as well, but I've just give it the quick overview just to sort of give it its identity and let it know what it's meant to be really aiming to do. Move into the task. I do like to tell it to do it step by step and then break it out into steps, because that does mean that it's a little bit more meticulous in how it moves through and picking up information. Now that obviously we're working with 128k context windows, which back when we started using ChatGPT, I think it was closer to 8 if we were lucky. So you can imagine it used to really have to work it to get it to look at everything. Now it can just drink all that information in easily. So I'm asking it to read the transcript in its entirety, and also to use the parameters down here at each of these steps. So first step, read it thoroughly, understand the context, what's being discussed. Number 2, identifying the key participants and their roles. So who's speaking, what they're who's been in attendance, what they're speaking about, what seems to be the thing that they care about the most. Really trying to go, right, what are all the important parts of when you're in a meeting? This, of course, is a starting point. If you guys go into a meeting and you've got completely different objectives and all you want to know is how much money is being spent, what is the key software they're talking about, how many times do they use the word but, whatever you give a shit about, this is where you tell it what to do. So, and then the other ones we have is the highlight important points. So it's marking out exactly what's going on, and it's sort of imagine it's taking the high level and it's zooming in a little bit. That's how doing this step by step gives it a slightly better output, in my opinion. But of course, it's just as much an art as it is a science when it comes down to prompt engineering. So play around with it and get it to where you want it to go. Extracting the high level steps, so pulling out the important points, and then summarizing it into bullet points for clarity. So just making sure that it knows that it needs to do the formatting at the end. Then so that's obviously the high level, the tasks that it needs to go through. Here are the particular bits where you're really nailing in on the particulars to make sure it gives you a quality output. So parameters, I like to remind it that it's working with a transcript, so obviously people can get names wrong, but names can be generated as like Doja or Doji or Doja with 2 G's, or you know, it can be spelt lots of different ways when a transcriber is doing the work. So telling it to understand that and deal with names is another small thing that seems to improve performance. Second point for me, I'm like, well, when you're analyzing, what are the things that I care about the most finding out about? So for every possible kind of useful information, the ones that off the top of my head was like, right, well, what are the promises that have been made? So when you're on a client call especially, we all know that sometimes you just start going, yeah, we can do that, oh yeah, I'll do that, and then it falls out the back of your brain because you didn't really mean it, or it wasn't really directly relevant to the conversation, you were just trying to move things along. This just means that you've got the list of the things that you've actually put yourself down for to either action or just sort of backtrack on, just so there's no like, oh, they've forgotten, oh, I'm waiting for this thing, which obviously is very important when you're trying to build client rapport. Other ones, obviously, actions and tasks assigned, because when we're talking around, oh, right, well, what needs to happen, when does it need to happen by, who's meant to be doing it, that's very important information to capture and for it to be easily accessible inside of a meeting summary. And then finally, future plans as well. So obviously, when you're going, oh yeah, well, in the future, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, or once we've done this work, we'll get on to this next. That's for the more non-immediate actions, the ones that are in the future. Cool, just pop it on. Third one here for me was this is another very important thing around what assistants can do. Assistants can actually, if I come back here, on retrieval, they can look into multiple files. So the goal is with this one, and the way we're going to set this one up is it should be able to access other files as they come in and get uploaded as well. So in the future, when that's working through, it'll be able to go, okay, cool, you had this meeting with John Simmons, and oh, well, he said this, but oh, you did that, whatever, right? Inside of the other parts on this one, I wanted it to make sure that it specifically meets about budgets and costs. So obviously when we have client calls, it all comes down to how much money they want to spend or things that they're happy or unhappy to spend on. So it's good to pull that out directly. If you're only internal facing, you can make them more around the key things that you ask your staff to do, or the things that your team are always talking about, and you want to go in that little bit more detail on that particular topic, pop that there. I quite like getting direct quotes from the transcript in there as well to give more context, which I find very useful. And of course, again, hammering home that one more time, tell me about what's going on financially if there's numbers to be discussed. Another quick tip as well is if you don't have like a full-blown example of what you want it to look like, you can just start with formatting your answer and then sort of write in what needs to happen inside of each section. This, I mean, unless there's like specific a tone or formatting things that you want in, and you're happy as long as it gives you consistently like what is I've summarized here. So for example, in the exec summary at the top, I just want to know what the overall objective was of the meeting, what was the overall discussion, this is where I want the financial information to be mentioned, and just sort of a general sentiment and mood of the meeting. Because obviously, if it's a very positive meeting, it's good to capture that and understand that's where you've left the client relationship, and remind yourself, or conversely, if things have gone terribly, it's good to know that you're going to be walking into a bit of a firestorm on your next call with them when you're reading through your notes to remind yourself of what happened. In attendance, this one I quite like to get it to focus on telling me what individuals were specifically focused on. What was the thing that they were really like locked in on during the meeting, because that means that you get a sense of what that individual cares about. And in the grand scheme of things, when it comes down to stakeholder management, the CTO is going to care about something very different to the CEO. The account manager is going to care very different to, I don't know, the ops manager. It's good that you know what the overall company level is, but knowing what the individuals care about means you can tailor your communication a little bit more. You can, when you're trying to get things done, you can appeal to the what's in it for me factor for that particular person, because you know what's been on their mind, what have they been speaking about as well. And then, of course, the promises and actions. This is just getting a condensed list of all the things that have been promised, who by, when for, etc. So you know that actions aren't slipping through the cracks. And finally, this next steps piece is where I like to give a detailed set of recommendations on how to move forward after the meeting. So this obviously sort of takes the promises and actions, but also gives a layer of GPT actually sort of using a bit of its business brain, So including questions regarding unresolved parts of the discussion. So let's say that there was a client was unhappy with a proposed budget, and it didn't quite get resolved in the meeting. It's sort of, we just inside of it in the sales conversation, we went, oh, well, we can add this thing in, or we could do this, we could do that. And there was no definitive yes or no. It reminds you to go back, close that loop, work on it, or any other sort of unresolved issue, because clients, they're happy when everything is in a nice, neat box and they know exactly what's going on. And of course, taking recommendations from ChatGPT, useful in this particular context because sometimes it just comes up with something you hadn't thought of before, and that can just give you a bit of a, oh, I didn't think of it that way, or oh, maybe I should follow up on that particular point, that sort of thing. So that's sort of how these instructions have come to play. Obviously, best practice, because I'm just creating this now, in the future, after this is run a couple of times, I'll probably look to find the best bits that I liked for each one and give those as examples underneath this, because having the formatting your answer and example, as I'm sure you guys know, really repeating yourself to your to the GPT sometimes can lead to the most consistent performance, because it's trained to behave like a human being, and we like repetition, so therefore GPT's like repetition. And he also quite liked capital letters as well when you're trying to hammer things home too. Who knew? Anyway, so also final thing is make sure you've got the latest model on. In the grand scheme of things, guys, like, you know, it's a couple of cents per 1,000 tokens. Most of the time, this isn't going to be clocking in over more than 8 to 10, so it's like 20p each run. So unless you're working at scale, don't worry about that stuff. Just go for the best, the fastest model, which is going to be GPT-4 Turbo. So this is the latest model. By picking preview, it will continually, if it has updates, so if I show you more models here, you'll see, for example, GPT 3.5 16K Turbo has a date next to it, or GPT-4 1106 Preview has a number next to it. That's because those are when they've done some updates to a model, and obviously when they do an update, it usually means that it's better. So by picking Preview, i.e. one without any dates next to it, it will continually pick the latest model when it's running. So that's your way of staying up to date, not having to go back and commit to that as a piece of admin. In terms of tools, as I mentioned before, this is where you can set up function calling. So if you're obviously, you know your way around some coding, as I know some of you do, and you've got functions, let's say a Lambda function, so like a little workflow sitting somewhere on like an AWS server, or I don't know, there's an API call that you can make that does search engine results for you, that sort of stuff. This is where you can basically code it in. Other thing is code interpreter, so obviously being able to do data analysis. I like to sometimes stay clear of this one if I don't need it, just because obviously what you're doing is you're turning it on, and if the GPT thinks that it's turned on, it thinks it's available, it may misinterpret what you're asking it to do, and it will go off on a wild goose chase. Always good to just keep it locked down to the bare minimum of what it needs, so it stays focused and it does what it's meant to do. And with that in mind, I've got retrieval turned on and it's ready to rock. So, and as I said as well, really useful thing, when you're writing prompts, for the love of God, don't do your testing inside of Zapier if you can help it, because in the test bit here, so let's say we're going to test this, let's click retest step. It takes quite a while to run, and it's because it's obviously pinging off to OpenAI, letting it run in the assistant, and then coming back again. Sometimes it can fail, sometimes it can be a little bit funny. You do actually need to do a test step inside of a Zap when you're setting it up, just so you can the workflow will continue. Otherwise, you can see here, I can't publish it right now because this has currently got an error on it. Of course, if you know it already works, you can actually skip it, but if you're building this for the first time, make sure it all comes through end to end. Let's work out why this is happening. Oh, this is a very useful thing as well, by the way, when you're building out on Zapier and you're working with a trigger, always try to make sure you've got data to put through the trigger, because flying blind when you're building these things, it's very hard to anticipate what's going to break, if anything is going to break. So it's always in your best interest just to pick something, even if you put in dummy data or something, just to make sure you've got something to run through with. So I'm just going to pick a file. So this one I think is there you go. Yeah, it was like a technical call I had with a member of, two members of a client's team. So I'm going to select that as my selected record. I'm going to go to this little test bit here. Cool. So it's telling, as you can see here, going back to this action part, the message. I'm just telling it to summarize the meeting. It already has all the instructions. It knows everything it needs to do. You don't need to add anything in here apart from selecting the assistant that you've created in OpenAI sort of platform. Leave the stuff blank. Make sure you've got the latest model on there. You can tell it to have the retrieval tool front of mind. If you wanted it to sort of like continue along a conversation, so let's say you had multiple assistants and you want to like pass the conversation across different assistants, you can use this. So this is really useful, but not in scope for this call today. And this is where you're telling it that it's going to look at the new file in folder here. So when you click into a blank box on Zapier, it looks to the other areas it can pull the information from. In this particular one, you want file PDF because very usefully, when you put a new file in folder in Google Drive and it's coming through, you'll notice in here, they all come through as Google Docs. When you've got a Google Doc, it can be pulled out and exported into like God knows how many different formats. But the best one for this performance is PDF. But if you scroll down, you can see there's other ones. You can pull out in like a text file or other things, and these are ways of like linking into them when you're trying to share it across lots of different things. But just pick a PDF, right? And then just to try that test again, as you can see, it's done the failed to start a conversation. Don't worry about this. It's just the thing that happens when it's doing the testing. It usually runs smooth as baby. And this is why we use ChatGPT for the testing inside of the sort of Zap building process. Gonna see if that works. There we go, cool. So it's run, it's summarized the meeting, knows what it needs to do. You see in here the run instructions, this is where our prompt comes in. Then this is where you can see how many tokens have been used. So this is very useful for if you're trying to do big jobs at scale or anticipate, what the cost is going to be, knowing what gets used for your prompt and then what gets used in completion as well. It's very useful. 74 using so there you go. Okay, so whilst doing that, access the file due to a technical constraint. I'm able to assist you with more details. Okay, cool. So let's work out what that's happened. Sometimes it's good to clarify that it is actually like an uploaded file they have accessed. So let's try this again. Another quick point. If you have existing files that you want to be able to make sure that it's in there every time. So let's say, for example, you have like a particular guide or something, or the company LLM document that Dan showed in his other video. That is exactly what you'd probably pop in there. Cool, so we're now going to run that test again. Obviously, we're probably going to see it maybe error out or something like that at least once more. And what it does like to do sometimes is just go, you've already had this conversation, I'm not going to have it again. So the best way to deal with that is just to continue through and publish it. And then go back in and edit it again. Just as it sort of refreshes it a little bit. So let's go back into here. Retest this. Or it says it ran 10 or 11 seconds ago. Let's find the question. It has. Cool. Meeting transcript uploaded to you. So let's see what it does. We definitely use 30,000, so let's retest that step. And this is exactly why it's so much fun to just play around with AI, because sometimes it just doesn't want to obey what needs to happen. But rest assured, we're going to get to the bottom of this one. Oh, there we go, it's generated. It's ran. Let's look at the file. Let's see if the token size, there we go, right, it's got about the right token size. You can see the usage prompt is significantly higher than just our prompt, so you know that it's pulled out some chunks of information. Let's scroll down. Here we go, cool. So it's giving the executive summary, saying what I was doing, who was there, things that one of the attendees spoke about doing, some of the concerns, and the discussion. Pretty good. In attendance, spoke about what I did in the meeting. Obviously I led it, I spoke the most in it, so it could recognize that I led the meeting, what I was speaking about. the thing that Jeff brought to the table, and what Poby spoke to about as well. Actions and promises. You can see it's formatted it into what I said that I was going to do and what Jeff's going to do. So this is a great example of where I probably go back into the prompt and edit it, just so in the future it brings it out in this format, because it's quite good to have it broken out by person, I think. Highlighted the need for thorough data entry. Promised to have a quick chat with the team. Cool, and just introduced it for better management as well. So next steps, a further explanation on how to do the transition. So I spoke about that and the fact that we're going to receive an SOP as well in the meeting. Cool, further discussion, details about Notion might be needed, suggesting there's an aspect of project management or data handling that wasn't fully discussed in the meeting. Cool, okay, nice one. So we've got our output. In this meeting we didn't discuss anything about finances at all, so it makes total sense that has been included, but the rest of it has been relatively well stuck to. Cool, so we're going to hit continue there, and we come to the final part. So this is, okay, we've got the meeting summary now. What do we do with it? So there's a couple of different things you could do. I've just tested this one very quickly inside of a Google Sheet I had laying about that was in that particular folder at the time. So great tip, by the way, if you're just trying to add something into a Google Sheet row. It doesn't actually have a very easy way of doing that in Zapier. So instead, go to Google Sheets, look up the spreadsheet row, and when you already will have had your account. You do connect to your account. Just go through. It'll ask you to log in to your Google Authenticator. Done. Access there. Brilliant. Next piece. And this is where you just find the drive from where we were talking about earlier, where you got your tactic pointed to. And then, there you go, back to this tab. You find the spreadsheet that you want it to be put into. If you want it to be a spreadsheet, then find the worksheet. If you want it to be a spreadsheet. And then, if you want it to find the first row that's blank, so let's say, if we go into this one, it will come into here. Because what I've told it to do is to look into the meeting summary column for this value, and at no point ever should there be a load of X's just by themselves in that column. So therefore it's going to fail at that, and then when it fails I just get it to create a spreadsheet row if it doesn't exist, and I just pull the title. So I'll go into this meeting name, meeting date, meeting summary. So I'm going to pull the name, I'm going to pull the date, and then of course the full response from the assistant goes in there as well. So we're going to retest this one, and bish bash bosh, there you go. So of course you might not want it to go into a Google Sheet. You might want it to go into a Slack message instead. So dead simple. Again, you're just trying to find the place that you want to push the summary to. So let's do that one I said then. Let's do a Slack one. So Slack, obviously you just need to pick the event. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a private channel message. So if you guys have private channels versus public channels, make sure you pick the right one, obviously. You can DM it to people as well. So this might be useful if you have a business partner who didn't make the call, or you need to let the team know what happened in the call, so you put it in your team discussion or something like that. So I'll set a private channel message here. Next, I'm going to choose the account it's going to select to. I'm also going to pick the Doja one. But of course, if you've got separate accounts for separate things, pop it in there. Cool, so what channel am I going to have it sent to? Let's go for GPT meeting summaries. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Cool, and then what's the message going to be? The message is going to be, it was full response, I think, was the one we were looking for. Full response, there we go. Cool, so that's then going to come through. You can specify whether it sends it as a bot or whether it sends it as you. So obviously it's attached to my account. So if I wanted it to make it look like I was sending the message out to people, I can select no. So I'm going to select no, so it looks like it's me sending it. Obviously, we don't need to put in a bot name because it's set to be not me. Here, you could actually put like little icons or whatever, or emoji or whatever. Include a link to this app. I would say no, just because it's actually a bit of a it breaks what it looks like. It doesn't look very good. And then the attach image by URL. Again, don't need that. Don't need to auto expand links. So let's say, for example, a YouTube link was in there. Obviously, not really relevant to this, but if you build a future automation that has that sort of thing, go for it. And of course, you could actually attach the file that's just been added in as well if you wanted. So let's add the files. Let's go file PDF. So there we go. So now when it sends that, it's also going to attach the file of the transcript, and it's going to have the summary there, so everyone can have as much detail as they want. And then send channel message if true, post in the thread of the channel, ignore the rest. Yeah, exactly. So don't worry. So that's basically if you were trying to get it to comment into a thread. So you know when you have like a message in Slack and then people comment underneath it, that's what it calls a thread. We're not doing that. We're just sending straightforward messages. So with all of that set up, we're going to test this step. Yep, cool. And I'm just going to make sure I'm not opening up any client Slack channels. I'm just going to find the GPT meeting summary one. GPT meeting summaries, excellent. And there you go. If that goes on the screen, you see it's posted in as me, executive summary, giving the rundown, in attendance, promises and actions, and then next steps. And it's also got the transcript attached to it as well. So basically, all the information is there, ready to go. Cool, right. So that is pretty much all there is to it, guys. It's a pretty straightforward one. Really, really useful. Obviously, just make sure you've got tactics set up. Make sure you've got your Zapier account set up, obviously. Make sure you get that. You watch that OpenAI developer account one if you don't have APIs or keys already. And I recommend watching the company GPT one as well. Cool. Thanks very much, guys. Catch you in the next one.